It may be the biggest story on Earth, but it's one of the hardest to grasp. Since the beginning, the landscape has given rise to life. Life, in turn, has defined and redefined the landscape. A perfect dance of chance and change. A myriad of species interacting, sustaining, driving one another to evolve. And no one species has altered the planet more than man. 1,000 years ago, the human race numbered 300 million. Today, we are 6 billion. Soon, we'll be 10 billion. Yet in a few startling environments, at once pristine and imperiled, the ancient dance continues.
La musique, à l'appareil, le diable du gouvernement. C'est Maréchal Raleigh.
Madagascar is famous as the home of the lemur,
Envoyez la musique.
the chameleon, and a host of other exotic species, all evolved in unique ways thanks to the Great Island's isolation and wide range of ecosystems. But as diverse as Madagascar's animal and insect life may be, they pale in comparison with her plant life. Thanks to endemism, which happens when species evolve in only one place on the planet, Madagascar is home to 15,000 plants found nowhere else. As with her animals and insects, scientists are still discovering new species of vegetation as they comb the island's forests.
Here we are in the northeast of Madagascar, in the Darena region here. We are working here to conserve some forest blocks in this rural area of savannas. And the conservation is very important here because it's a transition area. We have different kind of forest, especially humid to dry forest.
Sebastian Vollhauser from Switzerland is a botanist. He's been studying Madagascar's plants since the 1990s. Today, he's leading a team into the transitional forests outside Darene in the extreme north. Beautiful to the untrained eye, the savannas and foothills of this remote area are examples of intense deforestation. This entire region was once covered in a continuous blanket of forest. Sebastian has come here hoping to see new aspects of familiar plants and collect species he's never seen before.
That's a wine, Abrus precatorius, which is used to treat rougeole.
Rougeole is the French word for the common childhood ailment measles.
So if you want to treat rougeole, you just give 3 seeds to child. and more than 10 seeds, it could be deadly.
The expedition will roam the landscape, hunting species that so far have escaped the scientific lens.
Madagascar is an hotspot for biodiversity because the island was isolated during 90 million years ago. And after also the local conditions on the island are very diverse. I mean, between the landscape is very diverse, the climate is very diverse between the north and the south area. So all these conditions made that many species have adapted to all these different conditions, and new species were created in all the parts of Madagascar.
As the team moves deeper into the mountains, the scarred landscape gives way, and the primeval forest closes in. A wall of green, offering a chance to see amazing things.
Endemism is also a result of coevolution. You have here coevolution at two levels. First, concerning the flower morphology, which is done to attract one or two types of insects. And you have also a coevolution with ants. You know, here you have an ant nest here. And these ants are taking some substance coming out from this glandular teeth in all the parts of the plant, especially along the leaves.
After a 9-hour trek, the team arrives at one of several backcountry research stations set up in the mountains around Darren. It's in and around places like this that Sebastian and his half-Swiss, half-Malagasy team spend most of their time. What drives them is the lure of adventure and the chance to add something new to Madagascar's scientific record. And in places like this, neither is far away. Over an early morning breakfast of fried eggs and cornmeal cakes, Sebastian and the team discuss the day's strategy, then pack up and head out. The forest may be a few stems and leaves poorer, but botanical science could be much richer. Scientists already have found plants here that contain natural disease-fighting compounds. The rosy periwinkle, for example, produces a substance shown to cure leukemia. If Madagascar can preserve its untouched forests, Sebastian or someone like him will discover more useful plants.
There are two properties. This is against stomach ache. just make like tea, preparing like tea. And the other is against depression. Some universities made a lot of studies on these plants to find the compounds, chemical compounds, which is used to treat depression.
As long as Madagascar can maintain its stands of untouched forests, no matter what type, they will present a challenge to scientists such as Sebastian. Here, in endemic communities of plants, may lie discoveries that could change the course of science. The most familiar images of Madagascar are of its interior. Whether devastated or pristine. Geology and climate have blessed the island with a wealth of contrasting environments. To the southeast stands the eastern rainforest, which thrives on winds from the Indian Ocean. A mountainous spine runs down Madagascar's eastern side. When sea air hits that barrier, it forms mists and rain clouds that drench the region, supporting a dense and vivid array of plant life. At the island's southern tip, the botany could not be more different. This region resembles southern Africa because millions of years ago, when Madagascar split off from the mainland, this end of the island was part of that arid region. Near Barenti, spiny forests harbor plants so prickly they draw blood. And gigantic baobab trees that soak up water like sponges. Madagascar's interior is a mix of plains and forest. But it's also the most heavily developed and populated area, so its landscape has endured the most severe damage. Madagascar's coast is a different place. Life here stands apart from life inland. Its light, its rhythms, its outlook. It's a place where cultures collide. Madagascar's shores were the first sight to greet the humans who arrived here 2,000 years ago. Since then, they have welcomed traders, pirates, and adventurers. To a crossroads that soon became one culture based on fishing. Traces of every people to leave a mark on Madagascar can be seen here in the shadow of the special society that develops at the edge of an island. Madagascar is the world's fourth largest island. So big, it has islands of its own. Dots of land set tantalizingly close to her shores. These islands offer scientists a chance to learn more about species that may have escaped notice on the mainland. Part of Sebastian Vollhauser's research of Madagascar takes him to these outlying islands.
In Madagascar, there are about between 10,000 to 12,000 of plant species. Almost 80 to 90% of these are endemic. That means they're only in Madagascar and anywhere else in the world. The islands are very specific, especially for birds, nesting site, and some endemic, micro-endemic species are also encountered in some of these islands.
This is Nosy Bay, a speck of land just off the east coast. Away from the beaches and settlements, the island's forests are full of unusual species. Nosy Bay and the other minor islands replicate the rich rainforest that once covered much of eastern Madagascar. They are havens for an array of species.
So here you have most of all the coastal species, like this one, Sophora tomentosa, which is all around the tropical coastal seas everywhere in Central America, in East Asia, and also in Madagascar and Africa. And most of these species make very light fruit that are transported by the sea from one place to the others. So that's why all these species are very common all around the Indian Ocean and even around the ocean.
Sebastian sees islands like Nosy Bay as potential sources of information impossible to find anywhere else. Even an expedition as brief as this could uncover plants never before recorded.
So long you make studies on plants or animals, you will discover new species. As we made in this area, we have discovered maybe 9 species in 100 days of work. So you can just continue research on plants and discover many, many new species in Madagascar. So maybe you can see from here, you have the young flowers. In fact, it's ovule only. That's why this is a very primitive family. In fact, that's the group before all the pines and conifers. And so this is the young fruits, the young ovules, and here you have the fruits. Only 1 or 2 of the ovules are pollinated, so you have 1 or 2 fruits for each of these inflorescences.
The dense growth makes the going difficult, but it rewards the skilled eye.
So in this type of forest, here on this small island, the conditions, environmental conditions are very rough. So we have the wind, the rain, the salt water effect, and so the evolution has stressed the species, and so in this forest you have not so much diversity. As you can see, you have maybe 3-4 species of trees. So this is one result of the evolution where conditions are very peculiar and very rough.
This harvest may not seem impressive, but it's a start. Sebastian won't know its true measure until he's examined his finds more closely, comparing them to species cataloged over the decades and centuries.
But the most important and the most urgent now is to conserve all the forests, all the forest areas, and then we will conserve all the plants, even the unknown species in these forests.
Sebastian Vollhauser, like most scientists drawn to Madagascar's beauty, is in a race against her destruction. He'll be back to Nosy Bay and the remote highland forests of Darien in search of that one discovery that might make the difference between destruction and preservation. Madagascar has a population of nearly 14 million. Most Malagasy live in and around the capital city, Antananarivo, or Tana. Once Madagascar was the last habitable place on Earth where humans had yet to set foot. A paradise of diverse landscapes, extraordinary species of all kinds, and a dearth of predatory competition. Long after humans had settled all the other land masses, Madagascar became a melting pot.
Madagascar is very unusual in that it was the last larger landmass to actually be colonized by humans. When we had great civilizations in Europe and in Asia, about the time of the birth of Christ, there were no people here. People only started to arrive on Madagascar, mainly from Indonesia, to some extent from Africa, about 2,000 years ago. So this is a very, very recently colonized piece of our planet.
The first people to arrive in Madagascar likely did so in a feat of brilliant seamanship. Sailors from what we now call Indonesia rode the waves from half a world away. They landed on the eastern shore, close to rainforests that had never known hunters. Around that time, immigrants from mainland Africa were crossing the Gulf of Mozambique. They beached in the east, where the dry, rocky environs resembled what the African explorers had left behind. As newcomers from disparate origins wandered the land, they beheld a world unlike any other.
The first people who came here really encountered a paradise in many ways. Unfortunately, the impact of people here has been very quick and very, very significant. This country has been really devastated in ecological terms, much more so than many other comparable sized land masses in other parts of the world.
Humankind, of course, is the ultimate invasive species, equipped to enter new settings and dominate them. That domination can be devastating.
People need to realize when a species, when a majestic creature, wildlife goes extinct, there is a whole circle of life, a chain of life that is now put into jeopardy. So what you see in these hotspots is when we just lose one creature, it means we're going to lose other creatures. And as we lose other creatures, we lose more creatures until you have a critical collapse of environments that really put in danger not just that physical environment, not just those creatures, but it puts mankind in jeopardy.
Because Madagascar's life forms had never dealt with humans, they weren't ready. Hunting was as natural to the newcomers as drawing breath. Back home in Africa or Indonesia, animals knew instinctively to flee from humans. Not in Madagascar. It was an ideal hunting ground.
And when people arrived here, they found an incredibly diverse group of animals, big ones, that occurred nowhere else. You had birds, the elephant birds, that grew to be 9 or 10 feet tall and weighed half a ton. You had giant lemurs that grew as large as gorillas. You had 2 species of hippopotamus. You had a whole range of very strange animals, all of which have gone extinct in the past 500 to 2,000 years.
The largest, slowest species were the first to go extinct. Giant birds and lemurs, within a few generations, hunters had wiped them out. Meanwhile, the immigrants were altering the land. They wanted to recreate the lives they'd left behind. For the Indonesians, that meant eating their favorite staple, rice. Traditionally, Indonesians cleared rice fields by burning the forest to reveal rich soil that could sustain many crops. Soon, Madagascar's interior was being slashed and burned and turned into paddies, flooded seasonally to grow grain.
Most of Madagascar was covered with forest. So they basically, with a very basic means, axe, family groups, clear land in order to plant rice. And they created a beautiful landscape made of terraces and brought water in order to produce rice. And they also cleared the forest to cultivate rain-fed rice, for example, which is something that is continuing today.
Madagascar's soil lacks the nutrients rice needs, so after a few crops, they had to kill more forest and repeat the process. Time's passage was marked by a widening red stain, the scar tissue of erosion. Elsewhere, pioneer and secondary species of grass and shrub would have colonized the empty soil, eventually making way for more forest. But Madagascar's unique ecology had no such species, no way to heal itself. What's gone here is gone forever.
Extinction means gone, no more. Not here. Never more. So extinction's a pretty dramatic, traumatic event in nature. And the tragedy is, in modern times, is that these extinctions are driven by man. These are man-made events.
The other immigrants had brought a culture too. On East Africa's dry plains, the chief commodity was cattle. Herds not only provided milk and meat for sustenance and trade, but a badge of prosperity and power to be maintained and enlarged at any cost.
Cattle is very important not only, for the economy, but also for the culture of Madagascar. This is, it's a major commodity. This is for many ethnic groups, cattle is the bank. This is where you show your power. This is, your bank account.
Just as slash and burn farming denuded the land, so did herds.
The impact of the land use practices that were brought in from Asia, paddy rice, and from Africa, cattle, were devastating on this environment. And very quickly there was a conversion of natural forest and other natural habitats to degraded grasslands. So if you fly over this country now, especially in the Central Plateau region, you just see devastation. It's a moonscape, and you see some of the worst erosion anywhere on the planet.
Over the centuries, what once were immigrants became indigenous. The Indonesian and African cultures cross-pollinated. More influences came by sea. Visitors and traders from India and Arabia. These waterborne nomads made the island a regular stopping point for provisions and water, as well as commerce. And soon a common language took form.
Madagascar has a language that is spoken by all the ethnic groups. Although you have, some dialects and some variation from one group to another, most of people are able to communicate using the same language.
One Malagasy language with 18 distinct ethnic variations, each having evolved in its own way on the same island. Among Madagascar's most intriguing ethnic groups are the Atandroi.
The Atandroi is the ethnic group that lives in the southern part of the island. Actually, the only group of people who is living in this spiny bush forest. And the Atandroi in Malagasy means the people of the spiny country. And they are extremely well adapted to this very harsh environment where the climatic conditions make the daily life extremely difficult.
These people's African origins are plain in their faces and in their homeland, the sandy, spiny southern desert.
Atandroi tended to respect their environment, and there are a lot of taboos that are actually still enforced within the Atandroi ethnic groups.
The Atandroi are Madagascar's fiercest fighters. They raise cattle, run subsistence farms, and hold tight to their traditional practices, such as the ceremony with which they greet visitors. This ritual has overtones of the African rite from which it's descended. To the tune of drums and whistles and accordion, villagers perform by firelight. Their movements and gestures extend an invitation and a welcome to an environment outsiders would otherwise consider uninhabitable. Across Madagascar, ethnic groups follow their own patterns and practice their own rites. Habits can become vices, especially in agriculture. To preserve Madagascar's fragmented wilderness, the Malagasy will have to deal with the impact of their traditions. Rice and cattle have consumed vast amounts of wild Madagascar. For the island nation to hang on to the wild spaces that have made it a hotspot, the Malagasy will have to look hard at the way they live and make changes that will not be easy. In southern Madagascar stands one of the island's most enduring symbols. The majestic baobab. To outsiders, this enormous and imposing tree seems eerily unfamiliar, almost bizarre. One early European explorer described them as grotesque. Malagasy folklore, too, has struggled with these giant sentries. Their crowns suggest there might be something to a legend that a tree like this long ago angered the devil, who yanked it from the ground and turned it upside down, pointing its roots skyward for eternity. This ancient species may have originated here. Madagascar is home to 6 of the 7 kinds of baobab. The rest of Africa has only 1. Researchers say baobab seeds may have drifted across the Gulf of Mozambique to colonize the African mainland. Or, as some scientists speculate, the mighty trees may have graced the landscape as far back as 165 million years, when Madagascar was still part of the African continent. This baobab species, Andansonia grandidieri, is called Mother of the Forest. They grow larger than any other baobab. Some reach 100 feet, with trunks 30 feet around. So big they can be hollowed out as shelters. Baobabs can live a millennium, but 1,000-year-old specimens are increasingly rare in Madagascar. Whether for farms or lumber or charcoal, this keystone species of the island's dry forest environment often falls to serve human purposes. Yet, some Malagasy still believe that such trees harbor their ancestors' spirits. It's taboo to cut them down. The trees and the space around them are sacred. For the family that lives in its shadow, this baobab is the tree of life. As long as they have a say, it will stand. Sovita and Vriazi and their 10 children regard their baobab with devotion. Vriazi farms land inherited from his grandfather, who worked for years to empty acreage once filled with trees like this one. The old man never explained why he left a single baobab. But in the years since he established his farm, the tree has comforted his descendants and their neighbors.
Tiaroko mihitsy ny pôzipôzy, ary tadidiko ny pôzipôzy. Izy zany lako tantelo, lako tsion, miaraka androvako. Zay tiaroko tadidiko mihitsy izy. Ala be tamity.
Each day, Vriazi works his fields. It's the rainy season. On this morning, the land runs with rainwater.
Tantara aloha mety fantatry, sasany mety tsy fantatry. Satria moa izy reto zavatra raha tsy miala ny rano mitiry an'io. Io tsy afaka mitiry amin'ny tsingy agny na tety tsy andalovandrano, tsy afaka tirian'ny le baobab. Matoy zany mitiry amin'ny rano, dia sahala hoe miaigna amin'ny rano zany izy.
Like many trees, baobabs benefit from the occasional downpour, but too much water can kill them. Rice cultivation demands that farmers construct rice paddies to hold in rainwater, and the Malagasy people consume more rice per capita than anyone on Earth. However, evolution has equipped the baobab for a dry, arid soil, not the moist earth required for rice farming. Vriazi grows rice. If the rains accommodate, he can harvest 3 crops a year.
Misy maro moa izy io karazany vokatra vitan'ny baobab io. Misy moa zay fa antitsy regny fa reraky fa antitsy. Misy moa raha de mety amin'ny fahanterana satria sahala amin'ny olombelo izy. Satria na fantitsy izy zany de maty zany. Lafa tampitsy ny tokony taony io agny.
Through the seasons, the baobab stands and serves, a source of shade, a landmark, a haven for the souls of the departed. But the baobab is much more than a symbol and spiritual refuge. Its fruit is nutritious. Its seeds can be pressed to make useful oil. The bark becomes rope, cloth, and roofing material. If a tree comes down, cattle herders use the soft pulp inside as feed. And in times of drought, their trunks store water so well that thirsty Malagasy sometimes tap them to fill buckets. But sometimes, a tree serves best simply by being there, providing a family with a place where they can commune with those who have gone before, and gather to enjoy the company of those they love today. On Vriazi's farm, this lone baobab may provide raw material and sustenance, but it's also a treasured relic of the past and a potent symbol of stability that reaches toward the future. Madagascar was Earth's last untouched Eden. This enormous island, home to so many life forms found nowhere else, is now the front line in the fight to preserve the planet's ancient legacy.
Mankind has a stewardship, a responsibility to this planet. That stewardship requires us to look down the road, to be able to protect the pristine environments that we have on this planet today, to protect the hot spots from the degradation and kind of destruction that's going on there today. If we don't become good stewards of the land, become good stewards of the planet, we're going to find down the road that we've got a lot of problems that wouldn't have been here had we been good stewards.
These vivid landscapes are the stage upon which humankind's ongoing balancing act with nature will play out.
I like to compare the loss of a forest to the loss of a great museum. I mean, if someone were to blow up the Taj Mahal or set fire to the Metropolitan Museum in New York or the Louvre in Paris, everybody would be horrified. Oh, look at all these wonderful works of art that have been lost. And yet, on a daily basis, we are losing forests and other natural ecosystems that have within them living creatures who are unique products of millions of years of evolution, that are probably unique in the universe and certainly in the solar system. We're losing those on a daily basis, and yet no one really, or only a handful of people, a relatively small, tiny percentage of the global population, is concerned about that.
So successful in our struggle to survive in the natural world, we humans have come to dominate all other species and the environments they inhabit. Where once stood forests of incredible density, there is now a battle for the future of life on Earth. For the first time, one species, supremely dominant, has the power to put into motion an extinction phenomenon unlike any seen before.
My greatest sense of urgency is that we get ahead of the curve, that we're losing too much too fast. That is the issue with these hotspots, which is the collapse comes so quickly and can happen so fast. And if we're not diligent, if we're not foresighted, if we're not courageous and willing to stand up and think about how important these places are, we may turn around tomorrow and find that it's too late.
Yeah, there's no question that the degradation of the environment and the loss of biodiversity is going to be seen in a historical context as the single most important issue of our times. But how do you keep that first and foremost in people's minds on a daily basis?
Over the past 400 years, logging, farming, and development have claimed more than 90% of wild Madagascar. But it's the next few decades that count.
The worst case scenario is that many of these great places wash out to sea. I mean, you know, that there is complete devastation, complete elimination of these ecosystems. I mean, and that the wildlife and diversity of all of these hotspots are quite literally in jeopardy.
And still, with each rainy season, Madagascar's soil continues to bleed into her rivers, which carry the stain to the sea. If left unchecked, this tropical paradise will barely support life. Yet, in one of the most stunning advances ever proposed for conservation, Madagascar's president recently announced he is tripling the country's protected areas. More and more, local residents see the value of ecotourism, a new cash crop that has the potential to change the future.
If you can get this message across in every community that lives around a key protected area in this country, then I think you're going to have a lot of converts. And what these people think ultimately is going to be more important than what people think in the capital of Antananarivo or in the United States or elsewhere. They are the key factor in whether or not conservation is going to succeed over the long term. And they have to see benefits occurring to them as a result of conservation.
With help from outside and resolve from within, Madagascar may be able to save these slivers of wilderness that hold so much promise for scientific study and the future of life.
What a tragedy if we can't pass on to our children and our grandchildren the great wonders of the world that we live in today. That's at one level, but on another level, there is a fundamental question of the health and viability of this planet, and whether we're going to jeopardize the health and safety of our children and future generations by having such a short-run perspective.
Madagascar reminds us the world was once a purer, wilder place, full of mystery and magnificence. Today, a single species, large of brain, possessed of technology, has rapidly swarmed almost every environmental niche of the globe and dramatically altered the biosphere. And while the future presents no guarantees, Madagascar, like all hotspots, continues to be a living laboratory, only this time for saving our vanishing planet. Years ago, human beings first arrived on the shores of Madagascar. A giant island unlike any place else on Earth. Home to vivid settings and unique creatures, exotic and endangered, such as the golden-crowned sifaka. Some call it the eighth continent. Many species here exist nowhere else. Scientists call places like Madagascar hotspots, regions where life still emerges in wild bursts and unexpected patterns, treasure troves threatened by human development.